Hi and welcome back. Today I want to ask the question when or if, and it's a big if, the NHS will ever be thanking us. I was driving in my car a couple of days ago through a sort of a town, and there was a massive NHS sort of banner and logo on a building, and I thought for a split second it was what I just asked. Is it the NHS thanking us? And it was not. It was just another one of those thank you NHS banners. You'll remember at the start of the lockdown, everyone had in their window kind of the rainbow and thank you NHS and all this sort of thing. And any healthcare professional that's putting their life on the line to protect British citizens, is definitely worthy of some polite thanks. But we've taken it to a whole new level in this country, and you have to ask the question about who now is sacrificing for who. I mean, the British people have given up £2 trillion through this lockdown. They've also given up a lot of their jobs and their livelihoods and their standard of living for themselves and their children and grandchildren, in no small part to quote unquote protect the NHS. There was a story in my community about a gentleman that had fallen down the stairs, and he was screaming in agony, and his wife rushed in and said, "Hang in there, I'm just going to call 999." And then his screams of pain became even louder, and he said, no, don't do that, we've got to protect the NHS. So I think the British people have really gone out of their way to protect the NHS through this crisis, and I'm wondering if any thanks is going to be coming to us. You think about the contribution made by British taxpayers to the NHS, which is 150 to 200 billion every year, and we've spent the equivalent through this crisis of 10 NHSs just to protect the current one. And we also had all those sort of makeshift hospitals being built. A couple of months back, there was the Excel Centre, and there was the place in Birmingham, and they were filling up with hospital beds and Nightingale and all this sort of stuff. And now all that's been shut down because there was no need for it. We're still perpetuating this lockdown fraud on our country, even though the need to protect the NHS has long since passed. So I think we really need to relook at this relationship between the British people and the NHS and ask the question of who's actually working for who here. Through these Black Lives Matter agitation protests in the very recent few weeks, there's been a lot of talk about slavery, and anyone that's connected to slavery is now a bad person. Sky Sports has been contorting itself into like a pretzel shape, trying to laud and support and praise Black Lives Matter, and then all of a sudden wants to distance themselves. Patrice Evra says you don't need to wear the pin saying Black Lives Matter on your lapel anymore, and there was a huge sigh of relief audible from the headquarters of Sky Sports when he made that announcement. So people trying to distance themselves or kneel in front of Black Lives Matter still. Keir Starmer was trying to say they're not as good as we thought they were. If they're not as good as we thought they were, why are you kneeling in front of them? But let's get back to this slavery topic. And, are the British people slaves to the NHS? I've got a couple of definitions here. I mean, one is slavery is a condition in which one human being is owned by another. So, does the NHS own the British people? It feels like they do to some extent. Here's another definition: individuals forced or coerced into serving. Another is another slavery definition. And you also might ask the question of whether lockdown is a form of slavery. Individuals fraudulently convinced they have no option to leave a serving situation. And I think the friendly folks over there at Black Lives Matter might want to look into this. Any statues connected to slavery, any organizations that have even mentioned the phrase slave, in their long history are now being forced to close or be ripped away. And, if lockdown is slavery, why aren't we ripping away lockdown? And if the NHS relationship with the British people is becoming a form of slavery, why don't we get Black Lives Matter to be focused on that? I think that in closing, we really need as a country to be looking at all our relationships with all our different entities. I mean, the NHS always give this impression of being overworked and underpaid. Why don't we get the medical staff out of there then and get them into the private sector where they can be paid at a market rate and they can work at market rate hours? Why do we always have to have this relationship of servitude with all these people? Well, we're always the ones taking advantage of them. They're always the ones doing us all the favors. And it's part of our politics where we talk about beneficiaries and the need for more beneficiaries and the benefits for beneficiaries. Yet we never talk about the benefactors. Who are the benefactors? Well, it's the British people. We used to talk a lot about British taxpayers, and taxpayers have now taken on two new forms, in the recent past, but it's been particularly evident through this economic crisis and health crisis. We have now the inflation tax, which every British citizen is going to be paying through their purchasing power. And we also have what I would call the generational debt tax, where we're passing on our debt, the consequences of our economic actions today onto the younger generation, onto the unborn people, and it's something I totally reject. And so if we're going to do all these things for all these groups, we're going to be saving the planet through global warming, we're going to be providing foreign aid to all these foreign countries. When was the last time a foreign country called us up and said, thank you for taking our refugees? I don't think it's ever happened in British history. So the British people are making a lot of sacrifices for a lot of people, most obviously the NHS right now, but we're doing it for a lot of people all the time. And I don't think we're getting much respect. I don't think we're getting much thanks. And I think it's time we demanded some proper respect and thanks. I think we can start with the NHS. I think we can start with the British government respecting our civil liberties and our rights and, paying all their salaries. And, I think we need to get back to a proper country where we have these relationships of equals. People are serving us for a market rate, and, we're benefiting them by paying the money. It doesn't need to be this master-slave relationship all the time where British people are always the racists, they're always the sexists, they're always the ones to be doing all the bowing down and kneeling down and thanking everyone. Let's make it reciprocal relationships based on mutual respect. And, as far as the slavery point goes, I think Black Lives Matter are going to be very interested in looking into the NHS master-slave relationship with the British people. So thanks very much for watching.